What happens when pride outweighs discipline? When a simple game of basketball turns into a war zone, not because of the scoreboard, but because emotions snap? The NBA has long been the theater of passion, intensity, and relentless competition. But beneath the surface of buzzer beaters and highlight dunks lies another side of the game, darker, more primal. Sometimes, that competitive fire doesn't stay bottled up. It erupts, uncontrolled, in moments that leave fans stunned, players scarred, and the league forever changed. These are not just fights. These are the NBA moments when things got way too personal, when tempers flared, fists flew, and the consequences reshaped careers. This is Isaac Weah. Let's go back to November 19th, 2004. What began as a fierce Pacers-Pistons matchup ended in one of the most infamous nights in sports history. Ron Artest, after fouling Ben Wallace hard, retreated to the scorer's table trying to avoid further conflict. But when a fan hurled a drink at him, all bets were off. Artest stormed into the stands, igniting a brawl that spilled over into chaos. It wasn't just a scuffle, it was all-out war between players and fans. Security lost control. The scene looked more like a riot than a basketball game. The NBA suspended Artest for the remainder of the season, 86 games, while Stephen Jackson and Jermaine O'Neal also faced hefty bans. It became a defining moment for the league, forcing it to rethink everything, from crowd control to player conduct to public relations. The malice at the palace wasn't just a fight, it was a cultural earthquake. But Artest wasn't the last player to let rage take over. 2 years later, the Knicks and Nuggets squared off at Madison Square Garden in a game that spiraled out of control. After a hard foul by Marty Collins, chaos erupted. Carmelo Anthony, who wasn't even directly involved, shocked the world by throwing a lightning-quick punch that floored Collins. Melo was known as a scorer, not a brawler, but that night damaged his reputation. His 15-game suspension was the harshest among the 10 players disciplined. And just like that, one of the league's brightest stars was suddenly painted as a villain. You'd think teammates would be safe from each other, but that illusion shattered in 2017. During a Bulls practice, Bobby Portis and Nikola Mirotic clashed. It wasn't just a shouting match. Portis threw a punch that hospitalized Mirotic, fracturing his face and causing a concussion. The locker room dynamic imploded. Trust was broken. Portis served an 8-game suspension, but the damage was deeper than league punishment. It was personal. Mirotic eventually left the team, and questions about Portis's character lingered. It was a brutal reminder that tension doesn't wait for tip-off. Sometimes, it boils over behind closed doors.
And then there's the punch that almost ended a man's life.
In 1977, during a game between the Rockets and Lakers, Kermit Washington turned around mid-altercation and punched Rudy Tomjanovich with devastating force. The sound of Rudy's skull cracking echoed through the arena. Blood poured out. Players froze in horror. Rudy suffered a fractured skull, broken jaw, and spinal fluid leakage. He needed multiple surgeries to survive. Washington was suspended 60 days and fined $10,000. But the emotional toll was immeasurable. Tomjanovich eventually returned to play and later became a championship-winning coach. But the incident haunted the NBA for decades. It sparked rule changes, counseling support, and a new era of accountability. Fast forward to 2023. Warriors forward Draymond Green, never a stranger to controversy, grabbed Rudy Gobert in a shocking chokehold during a scuffle involving Klay Thompson and Jaden McDaniels. Draymond wasn't even part of the initial confrontation, but he charged in like an enforcer, clamping his arm around Gobert's neck in a move that looked more UFC than NBA. The league reacted swiftly. 5-game suspension, but the backlash went beyond fines. Analysts debated whether Green had finally crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Fans questioned his leadership, even as his teammates defended his intensity. The line between enforcer and liability had never looked thinner. Not even respected veterans are immune. In 2018, Chris Paul and Rajon Rondo, 2 season stars, erupted in a sudden melee. Paul claimed Rondo spit on him, and the moment escalated in a flash. Paul poked Rondo in the face, Rondo responded with punches, and Brandon Ingram came flying in, escalating the fight. The footage went viral. Suspensions followed. But it wasn't just the fight that stood out, it was the deep-rooted animosity. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment scuffle, It was a personal feud, years in the making, that finally exploded in front of millions. Role players aren't off the hook either. Patrick Beverley has made a career out of pushing boundaries. But in 2022, he took it too far. After Devin Booker blocked Austin Reeves and stood over him, DeAndre Ayton joined in the taunt. Beverley, incensed, charged from behind and shoved Ayton to the floor. The crowd gasped. The refs ejected Beverley immediately. Suspended for 3 games, Beverley claimed he was standing up for his teammate. But the optics were brutal. It was the kind of hit that could have ended an injury. Beverley didn't care. In his world, disrespect isn't tolerated, even if the response risks everything. Some fights don't even involve fists, just looks, shoves, and sheer animosity. Kevin Garnett built a reputation for psychological warfare. He'd get in your head and stay there. Players like Antonio McDyess and Tim Duncan nearly lost it against him. And Charles Oakley, Xavier McDaniel, those were the guys you didn't want to test, because one wrong look could spark a street brawl right there on hardwood. These weren't just games, they were turf wars, where pride and masculinity clashed under the bright lights. And then there's the long-term impact. A single moment of rage can define a player's legacy. For Ron Artest, the malice became a shadow he never fully escaped, even after winning a title. For Carmelo, one punch delayed his rise to superstardom. For Kermit Washington, it ended his NBA relevance altogether. The league now takes a no-nonsense approach to violence. Longer suspensions, steeper fines, and league-wide education. But it's not always enough. The adrenaline, the pressure, the pride, they still boil under the surface. These aren't just fights, they're flashpoints in NBA history. Moments where the game we love turned into something raw, unscripted, and unforgettable. They reveal something deeper, about ego, respect, and the breaking point of elite athletes under pressure. Fights don't always define careers, but sometimes they expose the truth behind the jersey. For more intense stories from the unforgiving side of basketball, don't forget to subscribe to Isaac Weah